Hey guys, so in this video what I'm going to explain are the real, the symbolic, and the imaginary, which are the basis of a lot of Lacan's thought and is kind of like just a really good intro into getting into a lot of his ideas and thought. So the way we conceptualize this is with three circles. These are called the Borromean rings. So this circle stands for the real, this circle stands for the symbolic, and this circle stands for the imaginary. When we talk about the real, we're talking about basically Freud's death drive. Which what Lacan calls it is jouissance, or enjoyment. So the real, we can never actually conceptualize the real because conceptualizing it would immediately be symbolic. So if we were to try to talk about the real, like I'm trying to do right now, we're already in language, we're already not actually talking about the real. We're only ever speaking in language. So we can symbolize the real, but that doesn't actually mean that we're talking about the actual real. It's like that Taoist saying, the Tao that can be spoken of is not the eternal and unchanging Tao. So the real in that aspect, the best we can do is to call it impossible, because we can never actually symbolize the real. Next we have the symbolic. So the symbolic is called the subtracting minus. We don't perceive pure impressions necessarily. So if we're trying to read something, like we're trying to read this letter, we don't just perceive like the line. What we perceive instead is the R. We kind of like abstract that and we know that means R, which as I'm saying it is the phoneme or the line itself. But because we're able to conceptualize it as symbolic, that's the R, stands for the real. So yeah, that's the symbolic. The last loop in this Borromean ring is the I for imaginary. This is what we imagine things to be. It's our individual fantasy of our lives. It's kind of our perceptions, like how we link up the real and the symbolic. We basically like imagine ourselves as this person, this human on the earth with all these other people around, and it's kind of just that's our imaginary, our individual fantasy of our experience of the world. This is, to use another Taoist metaphor, we've got the story of Chuang-Tzu, who he had a dream he was a butterfly, but is Chuang-Tzu a man having a dream that he's a butterfly, or is he a butterfly having a dream that he's a man? That's kind of like the paradoxes that the imaginary present to us. So in this real, symbolic, imaginary knot, we have a few overlaps similar to a Venn diagram. The first overlap we're going to go over is meaning. And meaning is in between the symbolic and the imaginary. So meaning is just what things mean to us in our fantasy. It links up, Lacan links up a bit with Freud here. It's like what we imagine things to be based on our history and like what we've previously experienced. So if you are afraid of dogs, then seeing a dog is going to frighten you. So the meaning when you see the dog is fear. It doesn't mean that that particular dog like is frightening you or going to give you a bad experience. It just means that that's what it means to you. So again, to give another example, if you have an opinion on the presidential candidate, when you read an article about them, like for example, say that you like President Trump. If you read an article about Trump, you're going to have positive associations with him. If you don't like President Trump, you're going to have negative associations with him. So that's what like President Trump or the symbol of President Trump means to you. Similarly, all language, like meaning, we can tell what meaning means. It's like the definition of something. So all symbolism is translated through meaning, and you can't separate the symbolic meaning from the imaginary meaning. Its meaning is created in the overlap of one's individual fantasy and the subtracting minus of signification. So the next one is going to be JA, in between the real and the imaginary. JA stands for the jouissance of the autre, the other. In French, autre means other. So JA is kind of like how others are in existence. It's also the realm of knowledge. So it's kind of like what we know and are certain of as a species. So like if I see a dog and I'm an English speaker, I don't really have to like go up to someone and question them and like, what's that? It's like I immediately know that's a dog, and so does everyone else. That's what the jouissance of the other is. It's like our knowledge of like what we know and what we are certain of. And a lot of this knowledge goes unquestioned. So basically all our presuppositions are here, all our culture is here, and all of our accepted forms of enjoyment. So we have, here is kind of like the unasked question. It's just like all our presuppositions of what life is and whatnot are all here in our knowledge of the jouissance of the other. It's also kind of like how you imagine other people know you. So it's like, this is what these people like know about me, and kind of like how I am to people. That's JA, the jouissance of the other, and it's mixed in between the real and the imaginary. Next up is going to be J-Phi. So J-Phi is phallic jouissance. This is the realm of the Lacanian pervert. Basically, this is the symbolic mixed with the real in jouissance. It's kind of like playing with meaning and like perverting meaning, like shifting signifiers around. It's also kind of like knowledge of sexuality, like personal meaning, and also how you interact with others on a day-to-day basis, where your jouissance and your sexuality, your phallic jouissance, are already playing an immediate part. It's how we're just in existence almost on a level of sensation, because a lot of our forms are already encoded in the symbolic. In the middle of all of this, we have object A, the little other. This is Lacan's mirror stage, which you may have heard of before. When we look in a mirror, we have this imaginary image of ourselves. We see this person, and we can kind of like link up our movements and see like what this person is and what they're doing. And we have just like this conception of ourselves, like this is almost like who we are. It's like who we are, and then we're using this who we are to know how to interact with people. So it's like, this is me, like my name's Liam Donovan, like that's kind of like, this is how I'm Liam Donovan to this camera. this is when we're trying to relate to someone else, we're using our object A, which is right in the middle of all of this, to kind of speak with them and just like relate to them and ideally gain some sort of rapport with them. So every ring on this Borromean knot is important. If one part of the knot falls loose, the entire knot just like breaks apart. Like you can't keep just two of these together. The whole thing has to be stable. If that did happen, the person would just go insane. That's kind of the situation Lacan poses. And we have to remember that because Lacan was a psychoanalyst and his idea was to help people within the realm of their experience on the earth with his topological knot. So thank you for listening, and we'll move on to the next video.